the agenda as presented, and let's begin with House Bill 1185. House Bill 1185. One of the problems with this big room is you got a long ways to walk if you're a member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the House Judiciary Committee. My name is John Hanson from Del Rapids, and I represent District 25. I have an amendment to this bill, and if the chair would allow, I'd like to pass that out.
Yes, have the pages. Pass it to the committee members.
What I'm also distributing is what the bill will look like as amended, because the amendment strikes a lot of the language, so you'll be able to see very clearly what it will look like.
That's appreciated.
And so, Mr. Chairman, if I may speak to what would be the amended bill.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Well, House Bill 1185 is an act to prohibit all qualified health plans offered through a health care exchange from including abortion coverage. So in 2010, President Obama signed into law the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Within this act, states are mandated to set up new health care exchanges through which health care policies will be offered and purchased. Now, very important to the reasoning behind this bill, these health policies purchased through the new exchange will be subsidized by federal tax dollars. And because these policies are subsidized by tax money, a compromise was made within the federal legislation to allow states to affirmatively opt out of allowing for abortion coverage to be purchased on the exchange because they are paid for using tax dollars. So the compromise provision in the new federal law can be found in Section 1303, and it reads as follows. Quote, a state may elect to prohibit abortion coverage in qualified health plans offered through an exchange in such state if such state enacts a law to provide for such prohibition. Now, in South Dakota, we already have existing law which prevents tax dollars from paying for abortions, but the new federal law mandates that states must offer a new legislation or amend existing legislation to affirmatively opt out of offering these taxpayer-subsidized abortions. In South Dakota Codified Law Section 28-6-4.5, it says, quote, no funds of the state of South Dakota or any agency, county, municipality, or any other political subdivision thereof, and no federal funds passing through the state treasury or any agency of the state of South Dakota, county, municipality, or any other political subdivision thereof, shall be authorized or paid to or on behalf of any person or entity for or in connection with any abortion that is not necessary for the preservation of the life of the person upon whom the abortion is performed. I've got a handout of that statute that I'll have the pages distribute as well, so you can read that. So,
Representative, while you're doing that, just in case there's any confusion among the members, in your bill book, the agenda and the bills for this special meeting are indicated by a blue tab. I think you probably all found those, but just in case there's someone that hasn't. Go ahead. Sorry,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the statute that you're seeing now is a long-standing South Dakota law which dates back to 1978. So as you can see, the bill before you is consistent with our current law, which prohibits taxpayer-funded abortions except when the life of the mother is at risk. Again, however, the federal law requires us to affirm our stamps and pass this law. So that we're very clear on what this bill does. This is not by any means an abortion ban. In fact, a Supreme Court case, Russ v. Sullivan, In that case, the Supreme Court held that the decision not to fund abortion places no governmental obstacle in the path of a woman who chooses to terminate her pregnancy. This bill is simply in keeping with our 1978 statute, which bans taxpayer funding of abortion. The people of South Dakota and the American public at large resoundingly support a measure like this. A CNN poll showed that only about 1/3 of Americans favor taxpayer-funded abortions. And a recent Quinnipiac poll showed that 7 in 10 Americans were opposed to provisions in federal health care reform that use federal funds to pay for abortions and abortion coverage. And about 1/3 of the states have already enacted legislation very, very similar to this piece in front of us today. So, Mr. Chairman, this bill very simply aims to reaffirm what has been on our books since 1978, that no tax dollars pay for abortions. This is allowed within the federal law and does not violate any constitutional provisions or any federal statutes. This measure enjoys wide support from the public and has already been passed in a number of states. So with that, I would ask this committee's favorable consideration of this bill. I appreciate your time, and I'll stand by for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further proponents? Further proponents on 1185?
Mr. Chairman, clarification. Am I speaking to a proponent on the bill or as amended?
You can speak to the original as well as the proposed amendment, yes.
My name is Linda Johnson, and I'm the registered lobbyist for South Dakota Right to Life. Without this legislation, federal dollars would flow to subsidize plans that cover abortion in South Dakota. As we know, abortion ends the life of an unborn child. Speaking to the amendment, on reading this amendment, South Dakota Right to Life believes that pursuant to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, this bill is in compliance with the federal law. We support this amendment, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Further proponents on 1185?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Matt McCauley. I'm a lawyer from Sioux Falls and a registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Family Policy Council. The Family Policy Council is in between executive directors, and so I'm helping them out this year, testifying on their behalf for legislation of interest to the Family Policy Council. The bottom line is simply this. Elective abortions are not health care, and this would affirm that principle and make sure that, as you've heard from testimony, taxpayer dollars are not used to subsidize these kinds of elective procedures, and we'd ask for your support of the bill as amended. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further proponents?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Linda Schauer. I'm the State Director for Concerned Women for America. We just want to be on record as supporting this legislation. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Further proponents?
Rita Hoagland, representing South Dakota Eagle Forum, and we are a proponent of HB 1185 as amended, or if it's amended the way it's indicated here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further proponents? And again, I want to remind everyone, if you intend to give or give testimony, make sure you've logged in and the podium at the back of the room. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Travis Benson, lobbyist for the Catholic Diocese of Sioux Falls. We support and ask for your vote of aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Further proponents? Further proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Alicia Sedor, and I am the Executive Director of NARAL Pro-Choice South Dakota. NARAL Pro-Choice South Dakota opposes this legislation because it is an unnecessary governmental overreach into the private medical decisions of women and families. House Bill 1185 will make it extremely difficult for women entering South Dakota's exchange to obtain insurance coverage for abortion, even if they're purchasing their insurance coverage entirely with their own funds. Currently in South Dakota, individuals and employers are free to use their own dollars to purchase the insurance they feel most appropriately meets their needs. In fact, 87% of private insurance plans currently offer coverage for abortion care. It is wrong for the government to take away coverage currently available in the private marketplace for a legal medical procedure. Proponents of this bill claim that it is necessary to prevent taxpayer funding for abortions. However, both federal and state law already prohibit the use of public funds for abortion care. The Hyde Amendment prohibits federal funding for abortions except to save the life of the woman and in cases of reported rape or incest. The new federal health care reform law maintains the Hyde Amendment's ban on federal funding for abortion coverage by ensuring a strict segregation of public and private funds, even requiring consumers to buy a health insurance plan with abortion coverage in the exchange to make two separate financial transactions, one to purchase their general insurance coverage and a second to pay the value of abortion services specifically. The law requires insurance plans in the exchange to establish a separate account that is maintained solely for the deposit of premiums for abortion services and outlays for those services. It also requires plans to use generally accepted accounting procedures to maintain the separation of funds for coverage of abortion services. South Dakota law also explicitly prohibits the use of public funding for abortion unless it is for the preservation of the life of the person upon whom the abortion is performed. Unintended pregnancies are, by definition, unplanned. Hence, women rarely will purchase separate abortion coverage in anticipation of these circumstances. If women are unable to purchase insurance that covers abortion care, they will be required to pay for the procedure out of pocket. That would force some women to delay having an abortion until later in their pregnancy when the risk is increased, and if health complications are involved, could endanger the health of some women. Still, other women will not be able to access abortion at all and will be forced to continue pregnancies either against their will or turn to unregulated and unsafe means of attempting to terminate their pregnancies. For some women, pregnancy can be dangerous, and abortion restrictions that contain exceptions to protect women's health only in limited circumstances endanger these women. This bill would limit access for women in the most desperate circumstances, whose care is often the most expensive and the most urgent. A woman who decides to have an abortion deserves access to safe, legal care for the procedure. Taking away insurance coverage for abortion does not reduce the need. It simply creates a barrier for women to access the safe medical care that they need and may force some women to resort to dangerous measures. I respectfully ask that you vote against House Bill 1185 because it is unnecessary, intrusive, and discriminatory. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Further opponents on House Bill 1185. Opponents?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Mitch Richter. I'm a registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Campaign for Healthy Families. I can count to 7. I just want you to know that I'm opposed to this legislation, as is South Dakota Campaign for Healthy Families, and we'd appreciate 41st day on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Further opponents? Further opponents? Seeing none, I'll allow opportunity by members of the committee to ask questions of the proponents or opponents. Any questions? Yes, a little bit. Representative Hansen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I just want to be real clear on this because one of the opponents said otherwise, but the claim was made that current law covers this, but that is not the case. As you can see from what I handed out to the committee, Section 1303 of the federal law mandates that we affirmatively opt out of this coverage. So once we do that, we'll be consistent with our current law, but we still have to pass this legislation to be consistent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions now of proponents or opponents by members of the committee. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for one of the opponents. I believe her name's Ms. Suter. Cedar. I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Chair, with your permission.
Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. For our listening audience who may not be aware of what your organization is, can you explain, so the folks that are listening, what NARAL is and what it stands for?
Go ahead.
NARAL is a formally used acronym that stands for the National Abortion and Reproductive Rights Action League.
Follow up, Representative Nelson?
No, sir. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions by members of the committee of proponents or opponents? Seeing none, we'll close the committee hearing to the taking of public testimony and move to committee discussion and/or action on House Bill 1185. Representative Turno.
I would move Amendment 1185 SA.
Second.
We have a motion by Representative Turno regarding 1185 AA or SA, and we have a second by Representative Tuberville. Discussion on that motion. Representative Turno.
Well, I won't offer everybody an essay about 1185 SA. I think it was appropriately explained by my seatmate from Del Rapids. I would urge your approval of the amendment and go on to pass the bill.
Further discussion on the motion to amend. Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion to amend will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Further discussion. Representative Tuberville.
Mr. Chair, I would move do pass as amended on 1185.
The motion is do pass on 1185 as amended, seconded by Representative Gosch. Any discussion on that motion of do pass, Representative Tuberville?
No, I think it was explained adequately, and I appreciate Representative Hansen bringing it to our attention. I would urge the board to support the do pass motion. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the do pass motion as amended? Representative Nelson.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to commend the fine-looking gentleman from District 25 for a good bill. I think those of us in South Dakota that are concerned about this, that do not want to see their efforts or money used in such a fashion, this is well served. I'd ask folks to go green on this.
Further discussion. Representative Killer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, I just want to go on record in saying that, I think it speaks volumes that if the vote holds as it is, we're all males voting on something that's going to affect something that we can never do in our lives is have birth. And, I think just leaving that option to women in South Dakota, which make up half of our population, is something that needs to be considered. And, I believe this was voted on a couple times already. So I just want to be on record in saying that. And, I will oppose this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Representative Turno.
Well, just briefly, Mr. Chair, I previously served in this House when this sort of phony argument comes up that it's males voting on this issue. A life is a life, male or female. I've had many women in my district who urge support of these kind of bills. It doesn't have to do with male or female, it has to do with life. And I would urge everybody to ignore the argument that because one of our members is not absent, that it would be all males voting. Do the right thing and pass the bill. Thank you.
Further discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor of the do pass motion on 1185 as amended will say aye. Those opposed, nay. The Secretary will call the roll.
Abdallah. Aye. Boomgarden. Aye. Feinstein. Gibson. Hansen.
Aye.
Killer.
No.
Kopp.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Russell. Torno.
Aye.
Tuberville.
Aye.
Gosch. Hunt.
Aye. House Bill 1185 will go to the floor with a do pass recommendation. Representative Hansen.
Mr. Chairman, I have a title amendment.
And do you have a copy of it?
I do have a copy. If I could have a page come and distribute this. No.
I assume, Representative Hansen, that you are moving the title amendment at this time?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second? We have a second by Representative Nelson, so we have a motion to amend the title. Before us, discussion on that motion. Representative Hansen.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Simply, it deletes some unnecessary language or other health plans offered in the state, and also except by optional and separate supplemental coverage. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the title amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of that? We just do a roll call. Yeah. Yeah. All those in favor of the title amendment to House Bill 1185 will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. House Bill 1185 title is so amended. Let's go to